But I have a bill called the Veto Their Visas Act, which would absolutely strip the visas and the student visas from It's very much in line with the president's executive order, and I was certainly glad to see him do that. I introduced this bill last year in the wake of Columbia
Yep.
because it's a privilege to study in the United States of America. It's not a right. You don't have the same rights as the American citizenry. And if you're here protesting our government, you're promoting anti-Semitism, you should get a one-way ticket out of here.
No, I think Secretary Rubio would be pretty quick to get his hands on that piece of legislation if we get it passed. And then in talking about the budgets overall, we've got the national debt, we've got the annual budget deficit. This administration has come in and also wanted to take on the budget deficit in regards to trade as well. With the implementation of Liberation Day and what's happened since that, it seems like we're working out a lot of longstanding business deals with countries who rely on us to be an ally for security, for defense, and other purposes. But when it comes to trade, they like to take advantage of us because it's hard for the United States to ever say no. We finally have a president and a Congress that's willing to work in that thread. Have you seen this kind of played out? And what the big there is, Congressman, is that we've been able to put China on display for the world to see their manipulation of currency, their manipulation of trade around the world, how they could stop in one country and basically relabel stuff so it doesn't look like it's necessarily coming out of China. All the IP issues they've had over the years. It seems like it's a masterclass in another edition of the art of the deal. And as this kind of plays out right now, this is going to be beneficial for Americans and our trade stance in the world long term. It just seems that like nobody wants to rip off the Band-Aid and just have a little bit of toughness before we can re-level the playing field and have fair trade.
Well, the only way we can have fair trade is if we have free trade both ways.
Bingo.
And even if you look at USMCA, it's awkward for me. I represent the Canadian border, but they're taking advantage of it. I mean, try to get a dairy product into Canada. It's got a 280% tariff on it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just not a fair deal for us. And Biden let it get off the rails. People understand strong leadership. And what the president has done here has zeroed in on putting American workers first. We have allowed our supply chain to become just this total global mess at the race to the bottom on price of goods.
Yep.
And we all got addicted to cheap stuff. It's great to buy cheap stuff. But, when you buy American, there's an American worker's family gets a paycheck out of that. And strong workers, strong family, strong country. And that is, he is putting the workers ahead of the corporate profits. I find the irony of the people screaming loudest about tariffs. I sit in the rules committee and listening to just the nonsense out of some of the members on the left on that committee about tariffs and how it's just chaos. These people are the first to, bitch and complain about corporate profits. Yet tariffs are evil. Well, tariffs, are not necessarily good for the big corporations.
Right.
They're good for the workers. And no districts probably had as much pain as mine in terms of loss of manufacturing legacy that NAFTA put in. And I watched those companies growing up go out of business, friends' parents lose their job. The towns that once, might have had 30,000 people, they now have 15,000 people because people have had to leave for greener pastures elsewhere because we have a terrible business climate in our state, and free trade agreements have stripped us of that manufacturing legacy that we had. And now all those jobs are in states either that have, fewer regulations or lower tax structure, better business climate, or they're overseas. I mean, and the pandemic should have taught us.
Yep.
We need to bring a lot more of that manufacturing here at home. When we couldn't there was one domestic mask manufacturer in America when COVID set in Texas, one small company. And we were so dependent on China that brought us the disease.
Yeah.
And that is a dangerous position for America. China cheats by every single metric. Most of this fury needs to be aimed at China, and the president's doing that. But all these countries need to be put on notice. If you want access to the American consumer, which is the greatest consumer network in the history of the world, you're going to have to give our products the same fair chance on the other side, or you're going to pay a price. And you have to flex in order to get results. You can't just say, oh, shucks, let everyone have a chance, and they can screw our companies that are trying to have access to those markets, whether it be the European Union or Canada or Mexico or any of those other countries. They have to have free trade both ways in order to truly have free trade, not free trade for them, and then we pay the price.
That's it right there. And then in closing today, Congressman, I do have to ask you, you guys hit a big hurdle in the reconciliation process right before Easter, getting that budget resolution passed in the House. You guys are heading into markups now ahead of Memorial Day, and the next couple of weeks is going to be busy for the Republican conference. I know there's some dates set up, Memorial Day being one of them, 4th of July being, hopefully with the completion or close to thereof because of the expiration of the Trump tax cuts. Just kind of want to get your perspective on maybe a little commentary on what you can tell our listenership the next couple of weeks is going to look like, and how important it is to stay on these deadlines.
We're going to have a lot of long hours. We have to get the job done because the president, putting the debt ceiling into reconciliation is critical, because we can't afford to let this moment go by and allow Chuck Schumer to basically exert his will over the progress of the president's agenda. Mm-hmm. And having the debt ceiling hitting, and we're going to find out that X date sometime soon. Is it in August? Is it in September? That makes sure that the clock's ticking. We have to continue to move the ball down the field and get this as close to the finish line as possible. And there's so much that has to fit in here. The entire tax code are changes, across the board in every single committee. I mean, I expect next week to be sitting in the Energy and Commerce markup for 30 or 40 hours.
Wonderful.
And yeah, it's really pleasant to, hear the same arguments over and over and over. But failure is not an option. The American people gave President Trump a mandate, and they kept us in the majority for a reason. They want his agenda to succeed. And that is the brightest path future for America. We have to clean up the mess of the last 4 years. We have to give tax certainty. I mean, this tax code, Joe Biden could have vilified it all he wants. He didn't take any steps to change it. He just spent money off budget.
Correct.
Because any growth he experiences because of the historic nature of the Tax Cut and Jobs Act of 2017. And it has we have to now give the American economy tax certainty going forward, keeping us competitive with countries across the globe, continuing to get that money that's offshore reinvested here in the United States. That has to happen. Keeping those rates where they need to be, but allowing small businesses to invest in their future and continue to create jobs. That is so important. Failure is absolutely not an option. So we have to put in whatever time's necessary to get the job done. And if that means skipping, recesses or whatever, that's what we have to do. But we can't allow Chuck Schumer to grind this to a halt because we're up on a debt ceiling, which is an antiquated measure of the government. And, we can never allow the full faith and credit of the American economy to come into question.
Right.
So it's a necessity that has to be accomplished, and we shouldn't have to count on Democrat votes to get that done. I mean, the president, his agenda is tied to this. He wants the debt ceiling as a part of this, and we have to get it done. And if that date's in August, well, then that means we have to work all the harder to make sure. But we must stay united. And there are differences of opinion, and there's differences of ideology, and everyone's got their red lines. But we have to have common sense that falls in line with the president's agenda. The president doesn't want to see draconian cuts to programs. Neither do I. We obviously do have a lot of people that depend on programs that they were statutorily designed for. Now, Joe Biden and Barack Obama, they expanded all of these things to add people to these programs that are weighing it down. And we have to make sure they're preserved for the people they were intended to under the legislation originally. And we're going to do that. But we have to stick together. I mean, everyone's got things in their head that they'd like to see done. You don't get everything you want. 80% of what you want is a big victory. Ronald Reagan said that, and you're my ally if we agree 80% of the time. That is lost too much here on Capitol Hill with some of the grandstanders. We have to be results oriented, and we got to put wins on the board, and we have to codify the president's executive orders. And we really can't get to that until this reconciliation process is complete.
That's it right there. Listen, Congressman, this interview has been long overdue, but I think our listenership's really going to love us catching up with you for the first time. We've got everything live linked in the show description today as well, including a link to your congressional website. They can sign up for your newsletter, see all the great stuff you're doing up on Capitol Hill. Where can we find you on social media? We'll live link that as well.
We're on every platform under, Congressman Nick Langworthy.